Alright, for this project I'm going to talk about our mistaken identity ceramic project, and for this you can make a shield or a mask. So the learning target for today is I understand clay techniques, stages, and expectations. For this you are going to watch a YouTube video, this video right here. If you have any questions you can rewind the video or raise your hand, and make sure you are taking notes in your sketchbook. So in your sketchbook you'll have 2 column notes. Your major topics is clay techniques, stages of clay, and cleanup, and you also have 3 tasks that will automatically get you expelled from the art room. So make sure you are writing those in your notes as well, kind of as a side note. Under each one you have some different subtopics that will go over here on the notes. So make sure you explain each of these, how to create a quill, the different stages, which I'll talk about, and then clean up specifically for the sinks, the tables, the floors, your project, things like that. So take notes along the side. If you don't take the notes, then when we start on Monday with clay, you will be going back to your video and filling in your notes. So make sure you're taking them as you're going along. Alright, so again, the goal with the notes and of this video is to understand clay techniques, stages, and expectations. Alright, so to start off, the 3 things that will get you automatically thrown out from working with clay is throwing clay of any kind, even if it's the smallest little piece. Making any inappropriate objects with clay. So if you cannot wear it on your t-shirt, then you should not be making it with clay. And taking clay outside of the class. So I have had a student who one time took clay out of a class and another teacher found it in her room. So not only was he not able to do clay anymore, I actually wrote him 2 office rolls, one for vandalizing her room and one for stealing clay out of my room. So these 3 things will automatically, I will ball up your clay, put it back in the bucket, and you will not be allowed in the room, in the art room, the rest of the time we're doing this. You'll go into a different classroom. So for this, and I'm not saying that would be the only consequence, may also resort in an MIR or an office roll depending on what it is. Alright. For this project I am going to do a demonstration. However, in my demonstration I only have the length of this video to show you this in your class period. So I am going to fast forward through this YouTube video right here just to show you some things about how a simple idea can turn into a really cool idea. So this woman, she's using coils, which we'll talk about later, and adding the dots, and then she's flattening them with her ruler. If you look, she's scratched and slipped, which we'll talk about. That's how you glue objects down. But her main idea is just these little balls of clay that she's repeating, some big, some small, some little, and repeating the same steps, and at the end, she ends up with this. So clay, I was telling my last class, clay can be, if you take a simple object and work with it with high craftsmanship, it can turn out looking really, really awesome. However, if you take something simple and do it with low craftsmanship, it can look like a kindergartner did it, and it will. So, alright, and another key point of this vase is the fact that they have small, medium, and large objects. So it is important to be thinking about scale when you're working with your clay project. Alright, another good example of craftsmanship with clay, and this is a very advanced example. But this woman, she draws out what she's wanting to put on her clay and then transfers it, which I'll show you here in a minute, onto a slab. And rather than actually balling up balls of clay and adding them to it, she starts with a thicker slab, and carves into it. So again, I don't have time to show you all of this, me personally, so it's good to see it here on this video. And if you look, she's just carving away slowly, using different tools. Right, and if you look, she's smoothing out, taking all the lumps and bumps out of there. right, and creating some really cool textures. And so with both of these, they both had an idea, they both planned it out, and now they're both cleaning up, adding, and slowly taking away. And hers is to extreme, you know, she's adding tiny, tiny little details, but it is a very great example of high craftsmanship. It's also, by the time she finished it, a great example. See how she has her stencils? It's a great example of scale. So she has some larger areas, some really tiny areas. So try to think of small, medium, and large when you're talking about scale, the size of your objects. It's a really awesome example. Okay, so coming back to our clay techniques, stages, and expectations in your notes. So I'm going to pull those notes back up here. We're going to start with your stages of clay. All right, so the first stage of clay is slip. So let me pull up my video recorder right now. Slip. And this is in our back closet, which I'll show you. This is glue to your clay. So over here on your notes, side of slip, you would want to write glue. And it is just really runny clay. So maybe put glue, a lot of water. Alright, so we'll be using that here in a minute. The next stage is workable. Workable clay you can mush very easily in your hands. It's not hurting my hands at all to work with this clay. However, it's not sticking to my hands. So the slurry, you know, when it gets too runny, it's going to be sticking to your hands. But when it's workable, you can press it very easily. I encourage you, when you're working with this, to get a bucket of water to keep at your desk. You will not need water when I first give you clay. That clay that I give you is going to be really nice, workable clay. However, if it gets to where it's hurting your hands to mush it at all, then you can start to slowly add water. Don't dump water on it. Slowly add water by getting your hands wet. But that, you do not need to do that the first day for sure. Your clay is not going to get dry that first day. All right. Moving on to the techniques. When I first give you, your clay, you're going to need to knead it. So for that, you're going to start with a cube. And you might want to add this to your notes, but we'll all be doing this at the same time. You just kind of keep throwing your clay down until it makes a cube. From that cube, you are going to press down and pull up. Press down, pull up. All right, you do that 10 times, and then you go back to a cube. All right, and then you'll do it 10 more times, pressing down, pulling up. All right, the purpose of this is to get all the air bubbles out of your clay. So if you have a lot of air in your clay, that's going to create little bubbles that will be weak spots in your project. All right. So for our first one, we're going to talk about slab right here. All right. For a slab technique, you'll need a rolling pin. You're going to start your slab technique by actually throwing your clay down. All right. So I know I say don't throw clay, but in this case, there's a purpose. And I'm not throwing it over my head onto the table. I'm just throwing it down. And it's starting to flatten out like a pancake. What you don't want to do, if you're not throwing it on just two sides, if you just kind of throw it down randomly, it's going to do the opposite of what you want. So throwing it down flat to get it to start coming out like a pancake. All right. When you get it kind of flat, you're going to stand up, and you need to lean against your canvas. So all this is done on a canvas, all right, which is in our supply cabinet. When you roll out a slab, you're putting and pushing your weight onto this slab. And mine an air bubble just popped in it because I didn't knead it long enough. Right? And then you're going to rotate your canvas, get all the wrinkles out, and roll some more. So it's just like rolling out biscuits. It looks really easy, and it should be as long as your clay is workable and as long as you're standing up. All right, some things that you can mess up. So over here by your slab technique. By slab technique on your notes, you should write canvas, you should write rolling pin, you should write throw the clay down first to flatten it, right? And then you should write rotate your canvas. All right, one thing that I see with people making slabs is it'll be like a mountain in the middle, and then the edges will be really thin. So you want to make sure that you work from the middle out. And if the edges are getting thin, just don't work with them anymore. Stop before you get to them. Another way people mess up is they will roll off of their canvas. Like they'll roll off the edge like that. And what that does is make some really, really, really thin areas that you cannot use. So make sure you stop before you get to the edge. All right, so that's your slab technique. So on your notes, make sure you put don't roll off the edge. Something else you need for your slab is a newspaper. Because we're not going to be working on these canvases, we're going to work on a newspaper for a couple reasons. But what you'll do once you get your slab the thickness you want is you will flip it onto your newspaper, pull the slab off, right? Fold up your canvas and put it back in the supplies for someone else to use. All right. I showed you yesterday how to hand in your outline image of a shield or a mask, whichever one you were going to do. If you handed that in, then I would have printed it out for you. Where's mine? Sorry about that. All right. So let's say I printed out your reference image for your shape. You'd lay that over your slab. Make sure it's covered everywhere. All right, you have needle tools over there. For your needle tools, they're the only tools that don't go in your tool buckets. So here's your tool containers like this that are over there. These needle tools, there's 16, which we count every day. And if any of them are missing, I'll have to call Officer Bledsoe in here. And you will not be allowed to leave the class. We have to have all 16 of these. So make sure those stay separate. All right, from here, you are going to take and do these little dots around your reference image, just like carving a pumpkin. And you can go slower than this. I'm just trying to go quickly, for the sake of time. All right. So again, this is like fast forward mode. You can trace the eyes if you're wanting to use that same shape, or you might want to draw you new eyes in later. Now, this would be how you transfer an image. So when I pull that up, I'll have my image transferred on there. All right, when I go to cut this out, before I cut it out, I would trace it. That way, in case you mess up, at this point you can still erase that line. If you cut it all the way out, you're not going to be able to erase. So trace it first. Make sure there's no shapes that you need to change. Make sure that looks how you want it. And then when you cut it out, hold your needle tool straight up and down, pulling around. So if you slant your needle tool, you're going to have an edge that's not straight. So you want to hold your needle tool straight up and down. If you get chunks of clay, you can kind of pull them out. Right, this is why we put it on a newspaper, because once you get it all cut out, you're going to remove the excess clay from your object.